Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital Today channel. Michael and Jacinda end up in bed after Selina and Curtis' $1 million fatal Drew deal. Selina Wu and Curtis Ashford's $1 million fatal Drew Kane deal was disclosed. Michael Corinthos and Jacinda Bracken also landed in bed together, so here's how Tuesday's GH episode played out. After Michael looked outside the window and realized Willow Tate was pressing ahead with the wedding, he fled. Later, Michael met Jacinda at Brown Dog Bar, and they became close as he expressed his sincere interest in her. Michael eventually accepted Jacinda's invitation to return to her flat, where they undressed and had some passion. Back at Drew's residence, Willow exchanged vows with him and officially became Mrs. Kane. After the incident, Nina Reeves checked on Willow, but she was still determined to do whatever it needed to get her children back. Willow feigned to be joyful during some quiet moments with Drew, who convinced her they'd all be a family once she was reunited with Wiley Corinthos and Amelia Corinthos. Brooklyn Quartermain was anxious about ruining the progress she had made with Giovanni Gio Palmieri at the Quartermain home, but he calmed her and asked that she be honest with him. Brooklyn questioned the same of Gio and sought more specifics regarding the night of the lab break-in. Gio recapped what happened and understood Dante's wrath, but he was plainly not interested in getting berated continually. Emma Scorpio Drake then had a private conversation with Gio regarding a note with an address that had been discovered beneath her door. The location was 3 blocks away from Brown Dog Bar, so Emma insisted it was the off-campus lab and intended to free the dogs tonight. Outside Curtis' apartment, Nathan West admitted Curtis wasn't under arrest, but he threatened to return with a warrant and warned that'd mean examining the premises, too. Curtis consented to go down to the station and answer questions since he didn't want to put his family through that. However, Curtis also insisted on Jordan Ashford joining him for the interrogation since he couldn't get a lawyer on the phone. In the meantime, Trina Robinson discussed the most recent police drama and the makeout session she saw between Jordan and Curtis with Marshall Ashford and Stella Henry. Stella reeled over Curtis reuniting with Jordan and wondered if this was why he was pressing for a divorce. Marshall begged Stella to keep out of it, but Stella clearly had other intentions. While Trina leaned on Kai Taylor for comfort, Curtis confronted Nathan's questioning in the PCPD interrogation room. There was new evidence because the cops were able to access the Savoy's alarm system records, which indicated there was an hour of missing time between when Curtis left the club and met up with Jordan. Nathan questioned whether Curtis had omitted anything concerning that evening, even though he claimed to have arrived to the Brown Dog Bar before Jordan. Curtis finally flashed back to meeting with Selina and proposing her a $1 million deal. Curtis replied he wanted Drew killed tonight when Selina asked what he wanted to set up. At Laura Collins' residence, she was shocked when Kevin Collins came home sooner than scheduled. It didn't take long for Kevin to figure out something was wrong, but Laura downplayed it until she could speak with him alone later. Laura told Kevin that she was worried about Professor Henry Hank Dalton after Lulu Spencer had finished her visit and Ace Cassadine had gone to bed. Kevin assumed Laura feared Dalton might appear back up and make more trouble for Rocco, but she said she found Dalton's body in her car trunk. Selina Wu and Curtis Ashford's explosive $1 million Drew Kane assassination deal sent shockwaves through Port Charles as the truth finally spilled into the open, marking one of the darkest reveals in recent memory. The entire day began unraveling the moment Michael Corinthos caught sight of Willow Tate through the window, realizing with a crushing blow that she was fully committed to marrying Drew. Heartbroken, frustrated, and unwilling to sit through a ceremony that symbolized the final collapse of their connection, Michael bolted and ended up wandering into the Brown Dog Bar. Fate intervened in the form of Jacinda Bracken, who immediately recognized the storm of emotions in his expression. What began as casual conversation between two wounded souls quickly transformed into something far more intimate. Jacinda offered both distraction and connection, and Michael, finally allowing himself to step away from Willow mentally and emotionally, reciprocated with unexpected vulnerability. By the time Jacinda invited him back to her apartment, the tension between them had already shifted into undeniable chemistry. Moments later, they were in her bedroom, stripped of hesitation and clothes alike, giving in to an intense night of passion neither of them had seen coming. Back at Drew Kane's residence, Willow pushed forward with her vows, officially becoming Mrs. Kane despite the emotional turmoil still bubbling beneath her calm facade. Nina Reeves checked in after the ceremony, hoping Willow might show even a glimmer of doubt or regret, but Willow remained steadfast in her mission: regain custody of Wiley Corinthos and Amelia Corinthos at all costs. To do that, she had to convince the world, and especially Drew, that her marriage was grounded in stability and optimism. During quieter moments alone with Drew, Willow forced herself to appear content, even smiling as he reassured her that everything would fall into place and that the four of them would soon be reunited as one family. Yet Willow's eyes revealed the truth: this was a marriage built on strategy, sacrifice, and desperation, not love. Meanwhile, over at the Quartermaine mansion, Brooklyn Quartermaine wrestled with anxiety over her blossoming relationship with Giovanni Gio Palmieri. The progress they'd made felt fragile, and Brooklyn feared that one wrong move might shatter their bond. But Gio, ever steady, reminded her that authenticity mattered more than perfection. He wanted the real Brooklyn, flaws, fire, and all. Encouraged, she pressed him for more information about the night of the off-campus lab break-in. Gio retraced the sequence of events, acknowledging Dante's anger but making it clear he had no intention of accepting constant beratement. Their conversation took an unexpected turn when Emma Scorpio Drake pulled Gio aside to discuss the mysterious note slipped under her door. The address scribbled on the paper matched a location just 3 blocks from the Brown Dog Bar, leading Emma to conclude that it must be connected to the hidden animal testing lab. With urgency in her voice, she insisted that tonight had to be the night they freed the dogs and brought the cruel operation into the light. Outside Curtis Ashford's home, tension erupted as Nathan West informed him he wasn't under arrest yet. He warned that if Curtis didn't cooperate, a warrant would be issued, and that would include a full search of the property. Not wanting his family dragged into chaos, Curtis chose to accompany Nathan to the station, though he demanded that Jordan Ashford join him for the interrogation since he had failed to reach a lawyer. Inside, Stella Henry and Marshall Ashford were left reeling after hearing from Trina Robinson about the escalating police drama. But what truly sent Stella into orbit was the revelation that Jordan and Curtis had shared a passionate moment, something Trina had seen with her own eyes. Stella immediately suspected that this renewed spark was the real reason Curtis was pushing so hard for a divorce. Marshall attempted to warn Stella away from meddling, but her mind was already racing with possibilities and objections she wasn't ready to keep to herself. Trina, still processing everything, leaned on Kai Taylor for comfort as the situation spiraled. Back at the PCPD, Curtis faced interrogation from Nathan, who revealed new evidence from the Savoy's alarm system. Records showed an entire hour of missing time between Curtis leaving the club and meeting Jordan afterward, an hour Curtis could not explain without incriminating himself. Pressed repeatedly, Curtis tried to maintain composure, but memories began surfacing against his will. With his heart pounding and guilt rising, he finally recalled the truth: he had met with Selina Wu that night. The flashback revealed him standing face to face with Selina, desperate and consumed by rage. He offered her $1 million, an astronomical sum, even for him, to arrange Drew's death. Selina, intrigued and cautious, asked exactly what Curtis wanted. His answer was cold, hollow, and deadly: he wanted Drew dead that very night. The memory crushed him as it returned in full clarity, signaling the implosion of everything he had tried to protect. Across town, a different shock was unfolding at the Collins household. Laura Collins nearly dropped the coffee pot when Kevin Collins returned home unexpectedly early. He sensed trouble immediately, noting Laura's tense posture and forced calm. She attempted to delay explaining anything until Ace Cassadine was tucked into bed and Lulu Spencer finished her visit, but Kevin wasn't fooled. When they finally sat together, alone and away from listening ears, Laura confessed a secret heavier than anything she had carried in months. Her fears weren't just about Professor Henry Hank Dalton showing up again, they were about what she had already found. Voice trembling, Laura revealed that Dalton's lifeless body was stuffed inside her car trunk. Kevin's expression shifted from concern to horror as he processed the gravity of her confession. The question now wasn't whether Dalton would return, it was who killed him, how his body ended up in Laura's vehicle, and how this revelation connected to the escalating chain of violence across Port Charles. As the truth about Curtis and Selina's $1 million hit arrangement loomed on the brink of exposure, Michael and Jacinda's impulsive night together added another layer of chaos, and Willow's strategic marriage to Drew continued pulling her deeper into a moral maze. Brooklyn, Gio, and Emma raced toward a dangerous rescue mission, while Laura faced a potential murder investigation of her own. In a single night, lives were shattered, alliances were tested, and secrets once buried began clawing their way into the open, hinting that the fallout from Selina and Curtis' deadly deal and Michael and Jacinda's passionate entanglement would reshape the entire landscape of Port Charles forever. As the night deepened over Port Charles, the consequences of everyone's choices began rippling outward in ways no one had anticipated, setting the stage for even greater chaos as the truth came into sharper focus. At the PCPD, Curtis Ashford's mind raced while he sat alone in the interrogation room, the walls closing in on him both literally and figuratively as he replayed the memory of his clandestine meeting with Selina Wu. The recollection left him shaking. Even he could barely believe he had crossed such a monstrous line. Grief for his own mistakes mixed with terror about what would happen once his secret came fully to light. Nathan West watched Curtis nervously tap his fingers on the table and misinterpreted the gesture as defiance rather than panic. Nathan's experience told him that suspects fidgeted before confessions, and his instinct screamed that Curtis was holding back something huge, something that might blow open the entire Drew Kane attempted murder investigation. Meanwhile, Selina Wu met privately with one of her trusted lieutenants at the back of the Savoy, coolly sipping a drink as she assessed the brewing storm. She knew the window for silencing this matter had all but closed. Curtis had been desperate when he approached her, nearly vibrating with rage and fear, but she was under no illusion that he would keep their arrangement buried forever. For Selina, the secret was a ticking bomb, and she had already begun considering who she might sacrifice to survive the explosion. Selina's businesses, reputation, and alliances were too valuable to risk for a man as volatile and conflicted as Curtis Ashford, so she made a quiet decision. If the heat grew too intense, Curtis would take the fall, and she would walk away untouched. Across town, the Quartermain mansion buzzed with private turmoil. Brooklyn paced her bedroom, replaying every conversation she had shared with Gio that day. His calm reassurance should have soothed her, but instead it reminded her of how much she stood to lose if she let fear sabotage their budding romance. Downstairs, Gio lingered near the grand staircase, staring at the mysterious note Emma had shown him and weighing the danger of her plan. Emma had been fiery and determined during their conversation, insisting that the address belonged to the off-campus lab responsible for animal mistreatment, and that they had a moral obligation to act. Gio wanted to protect Emma and stand beside her, yet he also couldn't shake the feeling that Emma's impulsiveness might get them both in trouble with Dante once again. He didn't want to be the source of Dante's anger a second time, but he also couldn't stomach doing nothing. The moral dilemma churned inside him, leaving him restless and conflicted. At Jacinda Bracken's apartment, Michael Corinthos lay awake staring at the ceiling while Jacinda slept curled beside him. The events of the night replayed in his mind in a loop, his heartbreak over Willow, their unexpected connection, and the fierce physical release that followed. Though he didn't regret it, Michael couldn't ignore the complexity of what he had done. He had crossed a line he could never uncross, and the guilt gnawed at him even as he tried to justify his choices. Willow had made her decision, he reminded himself. She married Drew. She chose her path. But even as he repeated the rationalization, an ache spread through his chest. No matter what happened moving forward, Michael knew that sleeping with Jacinda marked a turning point. Their night together blurred the boundaries of the man he believed himself to be, especially given the messy history of betrayal, secrecy, and heartbreak that had followed him for years. Moving quietly from the bed, he slipped into the kitchen and poured himself a glass of water, unaware that Jacinda had woken and was watching him from the doorway. Jacinda asked if he was okay, her voice soft and sincere. Michael hesitated before admitting that he didn't know what he was anymore. Jacinda listened without judgment, offering empathy rather than solutions. Her calm presence eased some of the pressure weighing on him, but deep down Michael also recognized the danger. Genuine feelings could grow from this night, and that would complicate everything. Meanwhile, Willow Kane stood alone in Drew's living room, still wearing her wedding dress. Drew had gone to check messages in his home office, leaving Willow a rare moment of silence. She touched the fabric over her chest, remembering the earlier ceremony and the vows she had spoken with practiced composure. She had convinced everyone that she was happy, except herself. Willow's heart remained fractured, torn between her duty to regain custody of her children and the emotions she could no longer fully suppress. She had made the choice that protected Wiley and Amelia, but the price was steep: the loss of her identity, the loss of the future she once imagined with Michael, and the constant fear that if Drew discovered even a whisper of her true motivations, everything would collapse. Nina Reeves, who had checked in earlier, lingered near the front door now, pretending to be gathering her things while secretly observing Willow from afar. She recognized the way Willow's hands trembled. She recognized the empty stare Willow tried to hide. Nina had once lived a life built on secrets, and she saw her former self reflected in Willow's quiet suffering. A war raged inside Nina, between the urge to protect Willow and the desire to expose the truth to spare the family further heartbreak. Ultimately, Nina kept quiet, knowing the time for confrontation was coming, but not tonight. Outside Laura Collins' home, the streetlights cast long shadows as Kevin hovered on the edge of disbelief. He paced the driveway, replaying Laura's confession in his mind. Dalton's dead body had been stuffed into her trunk. This revelation went far beyond anything he expected. Laura's hands had been shaking as she described the gruesome discovery, her voice catching as she recounted opening the trunk and seeing Dalton's lifeless stare. Kevin struggled to comprehend the situation. Who would frame Laura for murder? Who had access to her car? And how long had Dalton been dead before she found him? The possibilities twisted his stomach. When he returned inside, he found Laura sitting rigidly at the kitchen table, her eyes glazed with exhaustion. She tried to reassure him that she was fine, but Kevin could see through her bravado. Dalton's body wasn't just a threat to Laura's safety, it was a direct message from someone dangerous enough to kill and brazen enough to plant the corpse in her vehicle. Before Kevin could offer comfort, Lulu Spencer stepped back into the room, having heard fragments of their conversation. She demanded to know what was going on, and Laura reluctantly prepared to tell her daughter everything. Back at the station, Jordan Ashford arrived and immediately sensed the gravity of Curtis's emotional state. Sitting beside him in the interrogation room, she placed a steady hand on his arm and silently offered support. Nathan resumed questioning, his tone sharper now, certain he was closing in on the truth. Curtis's mind became a battlefield. Part of him wanted to confess the entire arrangement with Selina, desperate to relieve himself of the crushing weight. Another part feared the consequences, not just for himself but for the people he loved. His choices might cost him his family, his reputation, and every ounce of respect he had ever earned. As Nathan pressed for answers, Curtis broke into a cold sweat, his pulse pounding. Jordan leaned closer and whispered that he didn't have to go through this alone. Her words hit him with unexpected force. He realized that despite everything, the cheating, the separation, the messy emotions, Jordan still cared. Curtis opened his mouth, ready to speak the truth, but before he could utter a word, the door swung open and an officer entered with new evidence, a grainy security still showing Curtis outside the building where he met Selina. Jordan's eyes widened. Nathan looked triumphant. Curtis felt the world tilt beneath him. At the same time, Emma Scorpio Drake had returned to her dorm and began assembling supplies for the covert rescue mission she was determined to launch. She packed gloves, bolt cutters, and even a flashlight she had borrowed from the Quartermain boathouse. Her heart hammered with adrenaline. Emma believed deeply in justice and couldn't sit idly by while innocent animals suffered. She texted Gio, urging him to meet her near the off-campus lab before midnight. Gio stared at his phone, torn between protecting Emma and wanting to keep her safe from the dangers she clearly did not understand. Brooke Lynn, walking downstairs for a drink, noticed Joe's distracted expression and gently asked if he was okay. Gio nearly confessed the entire plan but stopped himself just in time. Brooke Lynn sensed the tension anyway, and worry crept into her features. As all these threads converged across Port Charles, the emotional, moral, and legal stakes climbed higher than ever. Michael wrestled with guilt and uncertainty after his night with Jacinda. Willow struggled beneath the weight of a marriage built on necessity. Nina kept a dangerous secret bubbling under her calm exterior. Curtis faced imminent exposure for the darkest decision of his life. Selina prepared to sacrifice anyone necessary to maintain her power. Emma and Gio teetered on the brink of a plan that could spiral out of control. And Laura stood on the edge of a terrifying mystery involving Dalton's death. Every choice made tonight would ignite consequences stretching far into the future. And as the clock pushed closer to midnight, Port Charles moved steadily toward a breaking point that none of them could outrun.